In this episode of 10 Minute Tuesday, we have a little bit of news for you, general OCR news. We also have a little insight into us, the ORM team, and also a massive thank you again to Epic Action Imagery for sponsoring this week's podcast. Right, so you're joining us for our second instalment of 10 Minute Tuesdays. We've got Kevin Newey again with us.
Hello.
Kevin, what have you been up to this week?
Well, busy with work most of the week. Don't know. A lot of people probably don't realise that as well as the magazine and organising Mud 7, I've got a full-time day job as well, so it's juggling lots of things, fingers in different pies.
Pies, literally pies. Right, so news this week then. We've got more Tough Mudder news. Ticket sales are still offline. Giles, the MD of Tough Mudder throughout Europe, is also now handed his notice in. So that leaves it in even more of a precarious situation. What do you think to that then, Kevin?
I just think it must be the writing on the wall for Tough Mudder now. Their events usually start April, May time in the UK, and there's such little time now to get tickets, to get people paid. The whole Spartan thing we discussed last week, I just can't see any reason why Spartan would want to buy Tough Mudder when they've got the opportunity just to jump into that space. It's going to be left by them, but time will tell. We'll have to see what happens over the next few weeks.
Yeah. If they do go into administration or whatever it is, bankruptcy, at whatever route it ends up going down, then it kind of leaves it open for Spartan, the option for Spartan to take control. I think from what I've read, that situation can sometimes come along. Rather than actually shutting company down and selling it all off bit by bit, they kind of actually pass it on to someone who they think may be able to pull a bit more money out of the company. It would mean that Spartan would get what they wanted anyway, and would be able to grab Tough Mudder. Do you think that would be a good or a bad thing, though, Kevin? Tough Mudder have been very, very good at the commercial side of things, bringing in nice big sponsors, and over the last couple of years they've had like Burger King.
We've had BrewDog last year, Bosch. There's been lots of big names there. But so they all get damaged as well when Tough Mudder gets dragged through the mud. So if they all start dropping off again, it's for somebody to take it over. They've got to start again, then getting all those partnerships back on board. Yeah,
which is, it's not going to be easy for anybody. As far as that's concerned, there's not really too much more we can say about that at the moment. It's just a kind of wait and see situation, see how the two companies pursue it in the US and North America, the ones who are wanting paying. Basically, it's two big companies that are pushing it even more so now into the realms of bankruptcy and what have you. So it depends what the courts decide. But I'm sure that'll soon come about. That'll come around quicker, sooner rather than later, because it's a hell of a lot of money we're talking about. They're owed millions, so they're going to soon want that money. They're going to be pushing for that to be put through court as soon as possible. Spartan have recently also announced the Deca Fit. I don't know if you've been able to see much of that, Kevin, but that's sort of a CrossFit style event. That looks pretty cool. Also tapping into another area of fitness, which is obviously a huge growth area. It's Spartan on the way to world domination again by adding that another string to the bow. But yeah, that's it really for news this week. It's obviously a quiet time of year. There's not really too much too much going on at the moment. It's the events don't really ramp up until it one time it would have been end of January, February time because of Tough Guy, but now there's not really much around. Pucker Racers, they had their first event of the year, which is quite an early one. That must have been a cold one.
McTuff as well.
McTuff, yeah. That's sort of gone down the traditional route of where Tough Guy once would have been as a freezing cold challenging event. It's actually, in terms of challenging events, Tough Guy's probably one of the more challenging ones I've ever done, just purely because of the cold and the conditions on the day. It made it real tough going. While we're on that subject, Kevin, what would you say is the toughest event you've ever taken part in?
OCR wise, it'd be Spartan Beast at Pippinford. Luckily, I got a year when the weather was a bit kinder. Actually led that race at the start as well. Don't know if you knew about that. Led the elites out. Didn't stay there, but yeah, just the distance for me. I'm not the fittest person. I just sort of enjoy OCR. But the distance was one that really killed me, and there was a really long lake swim, and it was absolutely freezing cold, and it felt like somebody was tipping ice down my back, so I was like flipping onto my back to try and take that cold away, then back onto my front, trying to touch the floor, and it seemed like I was just swimming for miles to get across. So that's really the toughest, because a lot of the other ones I've done are really sort of fun ones. I mean, I've done a lot of Spartan races, but when I look at like Nuclear and Rock Solid, Reaper, ones like that, I find them more fun than tough.
Yeah, a bit more all-inclusive, well-rounded sort of situation. But in terms of Pippinford Park, that's probably one of the better locations in the UK. It's got a bit of everything. That venue has got everything you could ever wish for in terms of setting up an OCR on those grounds, because it's just got amazing terrain to be able to tap into. So no matter what distance or what race you take on at Pippinford, it's always a good event because the actual ground makes it itself go. So this week, what we thought we'd do to let you know a little bit more about ourselves is we're over the next couple of weeks. So this session, Kevin's going to ask me a few questions to open up, basically to be a little bit more informative, so you know a little bit more about us behind the magazine, who it is, who are the faces. And then next week we're going to do the same with Kevin, so you can find out a little bit more about him. It sort of gives you that personal angle, so you can actually relate to us a little bit more. We are actually OCR enthusiasts ourselves. So Kevin, right, I'm putting my neck on the block here. What have you got for me?
So do I take control of this podcast now then?
Yes, that's it.
Yeah, it's just what I tell a lot of people that I've never met anybody as passionate about OCR than you, and I've never met anybody more knowledgeable about OCR. So I just thought it'd be good just for you to give everybody an insight to what initially got you hooked into OCR.
OCR for me was, I think I was looking for adventure, probably the same as what a lot of people look for when they stumble into obstacle course racing. They're sort of looking for that. What happens with a lot of people, they work in sterile environments, they work in office spaces. It's not that exciting, so 5 days a week, whatever it is, 9 to 5, if not more, people are stuck in these sterile environments, so they actually want to get out and taste nature again, and literally taste nature sometimes. And so I was looking through the internet, as you do, and came across the usual challenges, triathlons and cross-country events and all this, that and other. And then the first thing that really hooked me was a picture of Hobie Call jumping over a fire jump for a Spartan advert. And as soon as I saw that and then clicked on next picture, it were him crawling under barbed wire. And obviously you get that sort of, as a male anyway as well, you get that macho man sort of, I want a little bit of this action. And from there, that was it. It was within a couple of months, I'd already signed up for my first trifecta with Spartan. So that were in the real early days as well, when In fact, I think I actually signed up for my first event, which would have been a sprint distance event, because the trifecta didn't even exist then. It had only just been phased in, and then within a couple of months of that, once they gave this option to be able to do this trifecta, I also signed up for that. And way back then, you used to be able to pay something like £100, and for £100, you used to be able to do any race within the UK.
What year are you talking about here?
Oh, it would have been, I honestly don't know, 2011 maybe, 10, 11, something like that. I honestly don't know off the top of my head. But yeah, that's where it all began. So when the medals were nice, clean, simple looking, nothing like no fanciness like there is now, your reward were that you'd got through these courses where you potentially, the biggest thing with OCR when you first sign up is you sign this, what everyone likes to call a death waiver, or you sign your life away. And I know you felt this when you did your first one, Kevin. You're like, oh, what am I sort of putting myself in for here? I'm basically signing my life away on this piece of paper, putting my entire safety in someone else's hands. And that's the thing I think it's just that little adrenaline boost it gives you, and that little bit of getting out in nature, a bit of adventure.
So a lot of people, they'll sign up to their first events, and they'll probably feel the same as you, that they're the sort of reasons I want to do it. But for you, why did you then take it to the extreme where you launched like a digital magazine, and you sort of got so into it and so enthusiastic about learning everything, all the ins and outs of OCR? Why was it so different for you?
I think I just found it fascinating. I just really found it fascinating. And at that time as well, there was a smaller community than there is now, but it was very, very close-knit. So it was almost as if within a couple of races, you were already part of this big family, this big community, and you get sort of drawn into it. And I think, like with anything, like with any running clubs or any sort of clubs you do for fun, as soon as you feel part of it and you sort of feel fabric of it, it does bring out that enthusiasm even more. And that's how I felt. That's how it is with the community. You do get drawn in. And then me being the sort of person I am, a bit of an addictive personality and things, I like to know. As soon as I'm always on the search for knowledge anyway, but then if it's something I'm passionate about, then it's to the extreme. So then I wanted to know everything about OCR. And back then it were a little bit simpler, less races around, so you really could find out pretty much everything. So yeah, that's why it pushed to that next level. But as the industry became more commercialised over those next couple of years, there was a very newly formed digital magazine set up in Australia that asked me to write for them. And just writing basically what was my trifecta journey, went from that to being put in charge of launching the UK version of it. And unfortunately that one didn't work out, but obviously a little bit down the line, we all came together and founded Obstacle Race magazine, which was, yeah, pretty cool.
Match made in heaven.
Match made in heaven.
I mean, it's hard to believe that the first magazine we put out was 2014, but in that year we did a race director's special. So we did a little double page spread on all the different OCRs, like an A to Z of all the different OCRs in the UK. And sort of if you go through that magazine now, there's very few that are still going. We say that first OCR you did was 2010, 2011. So in the last 8-9 years, which events that have sort of come and gone are the ones that you really miss the most and would love to see back?
I think for me personally, Reaper Night Race, because I only actually got opportunity to take that on either once or twice, but the location is really good. We know that because we use it ourselves. It's a fantastic location with incredible terrain. I really missed that one. And also probably I never got the chance to take on Suffering Race, as in pain and suffering, full weekends worth, and I kind of regret never shoving myself forward to get it done sooner before it was too late for them, because the ones who aren't around, it's for a multitude of reasons, but it's just an evolution of things. People, a lot of race directors, very, very few of them get the opportunity to be able to work on their races full time. Most of them, it is one big, massive hobby, and people just don't realise that. They think that there's huge money involved in cash flows and what have you, and there's just not. It is basically like a huge hobby. And the people just don't realise that. They think that it's a full-time job and blah, blah, blah. And what happens is a few different reasons. Either it's not paying off enough for them for the amount of stress and what have you and logistics that's involved, or their normal lives, as we, I suppose, could describe it, change the course. So they either have kids come along or they have different priorities that take over at that time. So it's a strange one, and there are a lot that are missed. That we've obviously had ones that have come and gone before they've even put on the first race, which with an industry that was growing as fast as it is, and it still is now, we're still having races setting up all the time, and with it as fast as one goes, another 3 or 4 set up, and it's crazy. It really is. It's still in such growth. It's just that we don't see it because they just don't tap into what was such a close-knit community as what they once did. It's a little bit different now. It's a bit more segregated. There's all the little areas. There's a hell of a lot more teams. Those have grown. So yeah, it's a strange one now. But yeah, it's certainly changed a hell of a lot over the last few years, that's for sure.
I think back in the day as well, it was a lot easier to market your event, so you could just put an event up on Facebook and everybody sign up, and like I say, there was a community there. Whereas I don't feel like the same. There's a smaller community, and it's still very tight knit, the ones that are in that community, but I don't feel the size of it is as big. So a lot of the events now are sort of targeting more locals, local charities, local runners, and not trying to push out to the wider community because they don't expect them to travel, whereas we know people will travel up and down the country. I mean, the last question I got really was one that you asked me 5 minutes ago, which was what's the toughest OCR that you've taken on?
For me, it has got to be Tough Guy, Winter Tough Guy, because it's just absolutely brutal. From if you get a really bad year now, so it's completely changed now. So people need to understand when we talk about Winter Tough Guy, it used to be
It was end of Jan.
End of January. So they used to call it the 32nd of January that it was going to be put on. So whatever date ended up, whatever weekend ended up towards the end of that, that's when Tough Guy was. And if you got a bad year, which most every other year would be, there'd either be snow on the ground or there'd be 3-inch thick ice covering the lake sections and what have you. It would make it brutal because you're out running to start you off. You're absolutely red hot because you're taking all the precautions possible to try and make sure that you're not going to succumb to hypothermia later on in the race where you're in and out of the water constantly. But you've got this huge running section full of cargo net crawls. You've got huge slaloms up and down the hills, pinkish slaloms, and these are not your ordinary slaloms. These are literally pretty much a vertical hill, and they send you up and down and up and down and up and down. Once a few thousand people have been over this, it just turns into you basically clawing your way up and sliding down on your backside back down the hill again. And so once you actually get out of that, then you're absolutely red hot. You've already messed about with your layers. You've tried to loosen everything off, and then all of a sudden you're into water. So your body temperature goes from being absolutely red hot to being absolutely freezing cold within a matter of minutes. And the amount of people who are pulled off that course with hypothermia and and whatever. And cramp was a massive one because that obviously goes hand in hand with getting too cold and hypothermia and shock to your muscles and what have you. It was just it was like a war zone, which Billy, Mr. Mouse, founder of Tough Guy, used to every year have a theme of some sort of war, some great war, anyway. And it literally was like a war zone. There were just bodies all over the place, wrapped up in some sort of random blankets or nestled away with donkeys somewhere trying to keep warm. And it's just how it was, and it's just a brutal course. Unfortunately, over the last few years, the course is now succumbing to age-related wear and tear, and it needs a hell of a lot of money investing in it to sort of get it back to its heyday. So that's turned a few people away, and it's just not the same as what it once was. But the horse brass, you can still respect someone who's earned that horse brass. They have really earned that horse brass. You know for a fact if they've got that in winter time, they have really got it. And it's just, unfortunately, it's changed it now. They moved the date along a little bit to try and draw, I'm assuming, to try and draw more people in, to try and get a bigger field of runners. And unfortunately, that didn't really work. So we're just going to have to see where it goes. But it would be good to see it go back to the original Winter Tough Guy.
Yeah, I missed out on the Winter Tough Guy. I did do Netto Warrior once, and it peed down with rain that day. It was terrible up and down those slaloms. But I've just always loved the Tough Guy site. It's just, to me, it's just like a big OCR theme park. Just the whole show of it, with Mr. Mouse coming along on the horse and carriage, and coaches of Germans and Dutch OCR enthusiasts there, rows and rows of ambulances. It's just it's unreal, and so it's just a bit of a shame that it's not really a Winter Tough Guy anymore. But the course is still there. I think the numbers are capped now as well. But Mr. Mouse will always be an OCR legend.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, Mr. Mouse, Billy Wilson, was what we describe as the original founder of OCR. So he started it there 30 odd years ago on that exact site that it's at now. And year on year, it went from being a cross-country event to being... They added little bits each time to make it more steeplechasey, and then they made it a bit more what we would now describe as an OCR. But it just started off as hay bales and ropes and things at first. So for those of you who don't know, that's where what you can now describe as OCR began back then. So yeah, it sort of is like going back to the spiritual home of OCR when you go back there. It's just a shame things have changed so much there in the last couple of years. But yeah, it's a strange one. So yeah, is that all the questions you've got for me then, Kevin?
Yeah, because I think our 10 minutes has
definitely
overlapped a little bit. I could ask you more on another. I'll ask you more on another episode.
Yes, yeah. Well, I'll have some juicy ones ready for you next week. Don't you worry about that, Kevin.
Thank you.
Right, so don't forget, we've got subscriptions available at the moment. If you haven't taken advantage of yours yet for 2020, they're still there, still on the website, still definitely going to save you a hell of a lot of money on your race tickets. We've got nuclear races, we've got Spartan Race, we've got Pucker races there for you to be able to choose from, with as well as other tickets there. Obviously got Mud 7 there, our own in-house event in the lineup. If you haven't signed up to that yet, that's the 8th of August this year. You can find more information on that at mud7.com, and for our subscriptions, it's obstacleracemagazine.com, and they really will save you money. You can either go for the print option of the magazine with your subscription as well, and digital option. For those of you outside of the UK who are listening, we've also got a free digital magazine subscription option as well that you can sign up to. So you got anything to say to wrap things up, Kevin?
Yeah, last thing was just on Mud 7. We've got 4 zones announced so far, and we're going to be announcing the 5th this coming Friday. So you've only got a few more sleeps, and then we'll be announcing the 5th zone for this year's event.
Awesome stuff. I'm sure it'll be another corker. It never fails to impress people. So if you've not got your ticket, make sure you grab it, and we'll see you there on August the 8th. Right, until next week then, Kevin, I shall leave you for now.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much. Cheers, mate.
Bye.
What's up? Bye.